How did you end up at Notion?
I applied on LinkedIn. I saw the job opening. I still remember, it was account executive France. I instantly applied, got lucky because they were literally just starting to look for talent in Dublin.
Okay.
I went through a lot of rounds of interviews. The final one was with Ivan Zhao, who is the CEO of the company and co-founder. And once I got accepted into Notion, I packed my bag and moved from Paris to Dublin. And the company has grown significantly. I don't look at what school you attended. I don't look what diploma you took. Mm-hmm. I don't look at your grades. What I look at is...
Hey, you're watching the KLIMB podcast. In today's episode, we have Yann, marketing programs lead at Notion. We're going to be talking about a ton of different things, his early careers. We're going to be talking, of course, about what he does at Notion, what it's like working at Notion. And then we're going to move into different stuff. So I'll let you discover that during the episode. If you like the episode, of course, drop us a like, some comments, and enjoy. Super happy to have you in this podcast episode of the KLIMB podcast. I should probably rename it at some point. But I mean, at least it's on brand. You know, it's very simple. So thanks for being here.
I love it. I actually love your logo. I was mentioning earlier, it looks a lot like a block, which has some infusions from Notion, and I find it really compelling.
Thank you. Yeah.
As per the podcast in itself, I listened to the first few episodes.
Okay.
They're good. They're really good.
Thank you.
Like, I'm definitely going to be a follower.
Thank you. Yeah, you should definitely subscribe because I only have like probably... I don't know, maybe I'm lying. Maybe we have like 50 subscribers on YouTube. So that's a start.
That's strong. Strong episode over episode growth.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So yeah, super happy to have you on. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things, I'm sure. And as I mentioned a bit before when we were discussing, the first thing I'm eager to know about is a bit about how did you end up doing what you do today, and a bit about just your background, whatever you want to share. You don't have to go back to your childhood. If you want to, you can, just for the audience to understand who you are, where do you come from, and whatever you want to share.
Of course. So super quickly, Yann here. I lead marketing programs at Notion for the EMEA market. So EMEA stands for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Mm-hmm. And the way I got here was absolutely non-linear. I don't have a marketing background. I didn't study marketing. I am in no way, shape, or form a marketing expert when it comes to SEO or other levers.
Okay.
I reached it through a path that was primarily through business developments, partnerships, and sale. Mm-hmm. But let me take a step back. I grew up in Rome. I'm Italian, French-Italian, went to a French school, and then went for studies in the United Kingdom and then China.
Okay.
When it comes to work, I moved to Paris in my early 20s and started working for a garage-style startup called Fastery, literally a garage. I think there were maybe 7 or 8 of us. And I joined as a customer support person.
Okay.
Customer support, for those of you who don't know, is the guy behind the screen that tells you to reboot your laptop. It's literally what your job is.
Okay. So it wasn't behind intercom. It was like really customer support on the phone, that kind of thing?
Yeah. And I'm being reductive here because their job is a lot more than that. And I spent roughly 3 years there. Okay. And I went from customer support to, at the end of the line, leading their sales and partnerships motions and becoming a part of the startup of the studio.
Okay.
After that experience, I joined a company that has since then shut down called Livy. Livy used to do servicing for Airbnbs.
Okay.
And I joined as a partnerships lead. So my job was essentially to build the partnerships with the likes of Uber, Booking.com, and co.
Okay.
Quite rapidly, I grew within the organization and became chief of staff to the CEO.
Okay.
So my job was building up decks, hiring some profiles in administration functions, and doing a whole lot of knowledge management, like a ton.
Okay. What were you using at the time?
So this is going to sound bad, but I went with a competitor at the time.
Oh.
Yeah, I actually did. I was really into a feature that was allowing the tool to search within Gmail and other external tools. Unfortunately, Notion at the time did not offer that specific function, so I went with a competitor.
Okay.
Regretted it. After that experience, unfortunately, the company failed.
Okay.
And I decided to try my luck at being an entrepreneur. That did not go well. I tried building a tool for job seekers.
Okay.
I'm a huge believer that there is a market out there that I haven't solved for, which is to monetize job seekers rather than companies recruiting.
Okay.
So the idea was to build up a platform that would allow job seekers to look for jobs and then automate all of the job seeking elements, such as finding the right job, filling up your application form, sending over the CV, following up on LinkedIn, a series of automation flows. It didn't work. And I think that one of the main reasons why it didn't work is because I wasn't focusing on what matters. And that's why we can tie it back to marketing. I don't think I've ever spoken to a lot of users while doing it.
Okay.
I was focusing on building up a business plan over 5 years.
Okay.
I was focusing on UX, UI, but without even talking to the founders, believe it or not. I was spending hours and hours in Miro and in Figma. And I tied that lack of self-awareness in what it takes to be real founders to not knowing what marketing was.
Okay.
I was under the impression that if you build it, they'll come. And oftentimes, if you don't know what you're building, people are not going to know what you're selling, and therefore they're not going to come. And that's what happened with me. That was my mistake. It lasted for a little over than a year. And then unfortunately, I ran out of cash, I ran out of patience, I ran out of confidence.
You were on your own on this one?
I had an incredibly strong CTO.
Okay.
But the mistake wasn't on the technical side. It was on the business side. So after losing all of these assets that are required to be a successful entrepreneur, primarily trusting yourself in being able to build something great, I decided to join the only organization for which I loved using the tool deeply. And that was Notion.
Okay.
Roughly 4 years ago, Notion landed in Europe. They opened up a Dublin office, and that office was primarily a sales office.
Okay.
I think there were like 3 or 4 of us at the time.
Okay.
And my job was account executive. So I went back to my sales roots.
Okay.
I started selling to clients and friends. And while doing that, I started double jobbing and spotting a few opportunities along the way. One of those opportunities was building up the startup ecosystem within Europe so that every single startup within Europe would use Notion.
Okay.
And the value proposition was fairly simple. If we get every single startup to use Notion, it's going to be a short-term annual recurring revenues, and on the long term, those could become pipeline for larger clients.
Okay.
So we did that, or rather I did that. And I built that in EMEA, and it worked incredibly well to the point that then my job became marketing program manager. So from a sales background, from being an account executive within Notion, in a few months, I pivoted towards my first real marketing role.
Okay.
And as the years went by within Notion, I identified small pockets of opportunities within the EMEA region, namely launching communities, namely launching students programs, developing the startup ecosystem. And that grew into what my role is today, which is leading a subsegment of programs within Notion and working alongside a team of program managers that are helping develop those specific segments across the region.
Okay, nice. I have too many questions in mind, so I have to just say them, and then you can remind me just to so you can reply to those. The first thing is talking about community. How do you build a community? What it's like building a community for Notion, and why it's important. Just to mention it. Then the second thing is how did you end up at Notion? I mean, a lot of people maybe want to work at Notion. What's the process? And one thing that is important to me also is the relation between the Notion HQ that is probably based in SF, San Francisco.
Yeah.
And how do you guys operate between Europe and San Francisco? What's like the decision-making process? How autonomous are you in your job? That kind of things. We can dive in those different topics, but we can start with whatever you want. Community. How did you end up at Notion? Probably this one, maybe shorter. How did you end up at Notion?
Of course, I applied on LinkedIn.
That's it.
I applied on LinkedIn. I saw the job opening. I still remember, it was account executive France.
Okay.
I instantly applied, got lucky because they were literally just starting to look for talent in Dublin.
Okay.
I went through a lot of rounds of interviews. The final one was with Ivan Zhao, who is the CEO of the company and co-founder. And once I got accepted into Notion, I packed my bag and moved from Paris to Dublin.
Okay, that's about it.
Yeah, and 4 years later, I'm still there. And the company has grown significantly during the time.
How many people are you at Notion now?
I believe we reached approximately 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
I expected way more.
Many people do.
Okay.
Many people do. It's not as big as in terms of head count as many people think. It's a very talented small boat, which makes it a very compelling place to work at as well.
Okay, nice. And so moving on to probably what I was mentioning, either community or the relation between the US and Europe.
Yeah. So let me take the community one. I want to start by saying that I'm not the person who built the community at Notion. Mm-hmm. The community at Notion was built by highly talented people, namely Ben Lang and Camille Riquettes, who built the Notion community. Okay. They laid the foundation. My role within the team has been to take the great work done by the team in the USA and localize it and implement it and make sure that the community members are supported within the EMEA region. Okay. So that when they want to throw activities, when they want to create content, when they want to be closer to the product and potential clients, we are there to support them. And I think that bridges towards the question of how do you build a community? A community is a two-way street. I've seen a lot of companies expect a lot from the communities without necessarily giving the communities the tools to be successful.
Okay.
If I had tomorrow to leave my job at Notion and go and ask myself, how do I build a successful community? The first question that I would ask myself is, how do I make people successful? How do I make them successful at being consultants? How do I make them successful at being template creators in the case of Notion? How do I make them successful at organizing events? So the first question I would ask myself is, how do I make external people successful? Because if you make them successful, then you will be able to drive up trust and hopefully the engagement that is necessary to build up a community.
Okay. That's a good way to approach it, because I do want to build a community, for instance, of marketing leaders, Amazing. In Europe and so on. And we want to have like hosted private dinners, that kind of stuff. And I didn't think of it this way, So I keep that in mind. How do I make
Amazing.
My persona successful in general?
Amazing. But I would talk to Ben Lang and Camille Riquettes. Again, they are the persons behind the Notion community. Definitely good people to have on the pod.
Okay, yeah. We'll reach out. Okay. And so that's one thing. And so you said you applied the great job that was done in the US in Europe.
Yes. That is correct. Yeah. I don't think I can answer as directly to this specific question, but in general, whenever American companies deploy their operations abroad, a lot of the playbooks and a lot of the operations are handled within their headquarters. Mm-hmm. Let it be San Francisco, let it be New York, let it be another location. And one of the jobs of the local teams, whether they are in Asia, Europe, Africa, or any other places, is to take those playbooks, take those processes, and make sure that they're implemented to fit a different market reality.
Okay.
An African market is going to be incredibly different from an American or a European market. An Asian market is going to be very different within itself. Japan, Korea, Australia are very different markets. So how do you, as a local marketer, gather the intelligence and the know-how of your specific ecosystem and adapt the company's playbook and processes to fit a market reality?
Okay, yeah, I get it. So yeah, your job is to localize, but localize what has been done on one side and try to apply it with like the culture codes, I guess, from the countries, try to apply it so that it makes sense for the country itself and not just like apply, stupidly one thing and just copy and paste.
Exactly. And I love that. We tend to use the word localizing, right? And localizing in so many people's minds, it's just translating. Right?
Yeah.
You translate a website.
That's why I said localize.
But it's a lot more than just a translation. It's an adaptation of your positioning and your strategy to fit the local realities. And that's incredibly interesting for anyone who's interested in an international marketing career, is asking yourself the question of how do people perceive your brand, your marketing, your sales motion differently within different markets.
Yeah, I get it. Okay. So that leads to two other questions I have. One, of course, is talking about your different programs that you handle at Notion, what it really means. And the other thing, I'm going to ask it later on. It's fine.
Okay, perfect. So currently I'm focusing on 3 different programs, and namely the startup program, the community programs, and the student programs.
Okay.
The way we operate in terms of a team, all right, is that those programs, there is a strong culture also of just like test and learn, test and try. And whenever the program is ready to be potentially scaled or developed, then we bring in additional marketing program managers that join the team. Okay. In my case, I now have incredibly talented people within the team who are operating across those programs to help them scale beyond what my capabilities and my talent would be. Diving into each of those programs, the startup program, we essentially partner up with venture capitalist funds, incubators, accelerators, technology companies, and a variety of organizations out there to help raise awareness of Notion and help support those various portfolio companies and startups out there by providing them with a free trial.
Okay.
So if any startup is listening, we give away up to 6 months free, including unlimited AI, so that the startup can get started without crashing and burning a share of the runway immediately. And that's been running for years. This is very much, as of now, a partnerships and BD motion, but potentially it's going to be evolving in the future.
Okay. I do have one quick question on
Please.
that. I mean, maybe it's just my reality. It's just that Notion is so well known across the startup ecosystem. Why do you guys even need to broadcast that? You know, it's like when you talk about startup, maybe I'm wrong. And maybe because, as I said, because it's my reality. Maybe because it's so, if I start any company tomorrow, the first deal I'm going to set up for my company is going to be Notion. But maybe it's because I'm a user, you know?
That is such a good question. So let's forget Notion for a second.
Okay.
In the world of toolings used by various companies, there are a lot of challengers and new companies that come up and want to challenge previous companies. So a lot of those programs are also so as to sustain the awareness that you have within the market, right? It allows you to cement your position within an ecosystem. So if tomorrow you were to want to start a startup, first of all, you wouldn't necessarily know that you have 3 months that you can use, right?
Okay.
So what you would do is you probably get started and then you'd be like, you know what, it's a little expensive. Maybe right now I can't afford it. So we combat that part. The second part is what happens in 2 years? What happens in 3 years? How is the market going to look like then? And beyond Notion, you can't just assume that you will always be the most relevant company within the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, we're not always top of mind.
Exactly. Okay. We hope we will. We definitely are working towards that direction, but you have to sustain the momentum. You can't just rely on it. Otherwise, you can get challenged by upcoming challengers and lose a share of the market that once upon a time came to you easily.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, okay. It's like, it's pretty much like, I mean, I don't know. Yesterday I was at the commercial center next to my house. And so there were like just Coca-Cola, stands. And I was like, why do they even bother to broadcast stuff? It's a bit like the same mentality. I mean, you just have to be out there at some point.
Yeah, and you have to reach the right people. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Okay.
So that's the startup program.
That is the startup program. Okay. When it comes to community, we have various programs within the community world. Okay. We have campus leaders. Campus leaders are students within the higher education system, so masters and bachelors, and they represent Notion within their higher educations. They do so through meetups, they do so through content, and through supporting other students.
Okay.
the way to give back here would be to allow students to develop professional opportunities, which would then allow them to have, hopefully, a faster break within the career.
Okay.
The second segment being the ambassadors. Ambassadors are people, possibly like you and I. We both love Notion, and we decide that we want to spend they want to spend some time developing Notion and our positioning within the Notion ecosystem.
Okay.
Why do we do that? Because we love Notion. We want to contribute to this growing and becoming a strong company. And at times, we also have financial interests that are tied to Notion. We could be consultants, we could be content creators, we could be template creators. So we are part of this community called the ambassadors, within which our job is to make them successful.
Okay.
Success here can take different forms because it's going to be dependent upon the typology of the member. But it can vary from allowing them to cultivate more opportunities to being heard so that we can also adapt based upon their feedbacks.
Okay.
And the third category, which I'm less familiar with, are called champions. And champions are members within organizations that are championing Notion.
Okay. It's more like part of the sales process in general. Like you call a champion because he's gonna help you to close the deal. But is it like a real thing? Like it's a status of
It is a community. I wouldn't go as far as just saying that they help us close deals, because they help their company be successful through a correct implementation of Notion.
Okay, I get it.
Right? They are essentially championing the correct utilization of the product, which then has ripple effects, such as the one you've mentioned.
Okay. So the startup program, community, and then the student program?
Students, yes. So as part of the students, it is developing rendering accessible offers for students.
Okay.
So that they can access the product for free for a certain amount of time. And they can better organize their studies, better organize their internship searches, essentially helping them get a high start on Notion without needing to pay for the tool. And the way we operated there were partnerships with student organizations, partnerships essentially with schools, so as to make the tool directly available. And as you can see here, my profile is probably a little bit different from a brand marketer. Mm-hmm. It is very much driven by BD and partnerships to service marketing programs. Yeah. So a little bit different.
No, it's interesting. You're making my transitions easier. Actually, I was also wondering, you're growing your team and you're growing your different programs and so on. And at some point, you guys decided, okay, we need to internalize someone for the community, let's say. But how do you decide that, for instance, that ambassadors are just super powered Notion users, but they're not like part of Notion, right? They're not hired by Notion ambassadors.
Correct.
And how do you decide at some point that you need a community lead in one specific market?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. When do you realize that you need help as a company to manage a community? Mm-hmm. Is that okay? Perfect. That's a tough question. There are two ways to look at it. The first way is look at the numbers. How many events are being done? How many activities are being produced? Are those people successful or not? Mm-hmm. And through that very numerical rationale, you can start asking the question of, if we had someone, would they be better off? But ultimately, it all comes down to the second point, which is, as an organization, do you want to have community as a key part of your marketing motion? Because if you don't want to have community, if you don't truly believe in community as a key part of your marketing motion, if you don't truly believe in helping community members be successful because it doesn't tie directly back to revenues, then your community will unlikely be successful, right? So to answer that in a bit of a more direct way, it is, you have you can justify it by any way, shapes, or form by looking at the numbers. But ultimately, if as a company you haven't taken the decision to believe in it, even though it is not directly something that can be tied to revenues, then it's not going to work.
Okay. You're talking a lot about success. Success. What is a successful community? I mean, the success for your communities, the success for your programs, and so on. So, what is your definition of success for your programs? How do you define that?
Yeah, it's an incredibly good question. Ultimately, all of the programs are tied to a company North Star, right? So my success is dependent upon the ability to build programs and cultivate them in a way that supports the overall company's motion. And that could probably be a good, not necessarily good advice, because who am I to give advices, but my 2 cents that I've learned so far is that success is defined by how well you're able to support the company's North Stars. Okay. If you are unable to tie back success or metrics or activities to a company's motion, then your program is likely not set up for success.
Okay, I get it.
I don't know if that answers it.
Yeah, it does. And so do you have is it like one specific like metric, or is it like a bunch of different stuff? And because what is hard with community, for instance, it's hard to measure it properly. I mean, you can say, okay, we have potentially, I don't know, X number of new signups with this program, or I don't know, potentially you can have data from the product, but sometimes it's like just something, some emotions you create during those meetups and that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, I'll probably anchor it more to the second part. It sounds very much long-term versus the short-term of asking yourself, how can you tie it back to signups, or how can you tie it back to specific metrics? And I can't speak for Notion directly on this instance. This is more of probably a personal spin, is that I'll probably take inspiration from other communities that worked well and ask yourself the question of what were the metrics they were looking at, what made it work well. Let's take an example. Salesforce implementators, right? They're part of a community, a very specific community. Yeah. It started as, I love the tool, I want to implement the tool, and now they're responsible for implementing the tool across the globe, right? Yeah. Were they measuring them as signups and as commercial opportunities? Unlikely. It was probably more, do they love the tool? Are they attending? Are they formed on the latest features? And down the line, you know that through empowering and enabling and rendering this community successful, then they will develop also the company.
Okay, makes sense. Another question I have for you is, how do you see your programs evolving?
How do I see my programs evolving? Right now, they're being managed by incredibly talented people whom I hope are going to be able to grow those programs and continue to cultivate them. Okay. So those specifically for those programs. Specifically for me, I think that we live in a world that is so fast moving that it's hard to pinpoint exactly what the future would look like for, from a professional standpoint.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
And so you have programs, you mentioned those 3 programs, but do you have others that are managed by other people? Let's say, I don't know, for enterprise customers or...
Yeah, of course. So Notion is a very horizontal company, right? It services clients and users, from you and I who are using it to plan our next trips to enterprise companies. Yeah. So you're going to have a variety of programs that align with each of those segments and help them be successful and help them grow. Again, tying back always to the company's North Star. That's probably the biggest takeaway that I've had, was that it's incredibly hard to cultivate a program and cultivate a mission if you cannot tie it back to the company's objective. So regardless of whether you are undertaking marketing programs aimed at enterprise clients, a customer support program, or whatever else, if you can't tie it back, it's unlikely to be successful.
Okay. But so what is this company's North Star?
It's an internal metrics. It's an internal subsegment of metrics.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just like it changes from quarter to another, or from a year to another.
a company North Star usually remains fairly aligned, but yes, it adapts also to the market conditions and to the metrics that you inject within them.
Okay, I get it. One of the questions also I wanted to ask you before, as I mentioned, is a lot of people are like love the tool, and so they're wondering what is like the culture at Notion. Can you share some bits from that?
Yeah, sure. People tend to ask me that a bunch during interviews. And the most honest answer that I have is that I joined Notion where there were, I don't know, less than 10 of us in Dublin. Now there is significantly more. And I don't think that the company changed a whole lot. And that's probably for the better. It remains a company that has a very strong culture of being a builder.
Okay.
A very strong culture of being kind and direct. And a very strong culture of ownership. You were saying earlier you thought we were a lot bigger as an organization, right? And many people do. And the way you're also able to operate with for now, with less headcount is also because you have a workforce that is building around ownership, around the element of being a builder, around the elements of pace setting. So the culture remained the same as we scale. Honestly, it's a very good company. I'm very happy. Otherwise, I would not have spent 4 years in a foreign country.
Yeah.
It's incredibly good. I think I'm convinced actually that it will one day become a very significant company, and it's quite exciting to be rowing in that direction.
Okay, nice. And so probably you said it's a thing that a lot of people ask you in interviews. So moving on probably to this part about hiring people, how do you hire a good person in your team? What are key things you look for?
Let's start with what I don't look for.
Yeah, that's a good way.
And that's probably going to be clashing a little bit with French culture, at least the way I've experienced it in the past. Perhaps it changed. I don't look at what school you attended. I don't look what diploma you undertook. I don't look at your grades. What I look at is, are you, during all of your various professional experiences, have you been able to learn, adapt, and be flexible?
Okay.
So I'm going to care a lot more around your ability to be adaptable in X and Y organization versus you graduating from a top business school and spending a few years in a top-rated French company. And why is that? Because we operate, especially now in the era of AI, in a world where you need to think fast on your feet, and you need to be you need to be adaptable, and you also need to be low ego. And those are the core elements that I look for.
Okay, so I'm going to apply.
I'd love to have you.
Talking about AI, because you mentioned it, so I have to mention it. How do you see, does AI today play a role in your job? Does it make your life easier? Do you use it a lot?
Yeah.
Are you afraid of it? I don't know. How do you perceive it?
I use it a lot. I use it like a lot.
Like Notion AI?
Notion, I use Notion AI a bunch. Okay. How do you use it in my work? So the way we see AI is not necessarily a replacement of human capabilities or human intellect. It is best defined by our staff as a bicycle for the mind. Essentially, you will still need to say where it's going to go. You still need to pedal it, but it's going to help you get there faster.
Yeah, okay.
Practical use cases. I'm not going to ask it to draft a full strategy for me. That's not necessarily what I'm looking for, but is it going to be able to capture the various informations within my work to help me then complete the draft strategy that I've created, right? Okay. Practical example, I have a few internal meetings. I use Notion Meeting Recorder. I have a few different Notion pages with various informations within it. I can then use those two different items to help me build out something that would have taken me a lot longer to find as an information, right?
Okay.
So I'm not afraid of it. I think that so long as we are willing to use it as an extension of us, we are going to be benefiting a lot from it. The moment we decide to be lazier around it and probably only leverage AI to do everything for us, then we might lose a little bit the efficiency of AI in the first place.
Yeah.
We're not at AGI yet, so it needs to have a human input to be successful. So I use it a lot at work, and outside of work, I spend an unhealthy amount of money, I'm going to admit, testing various vibe coding tools.
Okay.
Like a lot.
Could you share like things you want to build?
Yeah. And that's probably completely disconnected from Notion. But
that's okay.
One of my greatest friends and I, we spend a lot of time just like having fun, building stuff. Nothing that we ever commercialize and stuff like that, but it's our hobby. It's just building stuff. And coding has always been a limitation of it, right?
Yeah.
Because it takes time. It takes time. So using vibe coding and skills, clearly, which I don't necessarily possess. So using vibe coding tools such as Bolt, such as Lovable, such as V0, Replit, makes it incredibly interesting. I'm very interested. Yeah, very fun.
Yeah,
I'm very interested in that whole world.
And you call it vibe coding because I didn't know exactly the term, or
it is vibe coding. I don't know who coined it. Somebody on Twitter surely coined it. But the more you play with it, I don't know. Have you tested it? Have you tried it?
I'm testing it a lot.
You're testing it a lot.
I haven't used Bolt because there are so many tools. So
now there are a few. Yeah,
there are a lot of tools.
Yeah.
And actually, that's one point. It's a bit disconnected. But it's linked to what we're saying. It's like we have so more and more tools coming on the market because of AI, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So you have so many releases from everywhere. You guys at Notion released a ton of things in the past week. I couldn't test it yet. It's like too much. Figma released a ton of new features. I couldn't test all of them. And same thing for all the vibe coding tools. So I tested Lovable, I tested Replit, and I've started to build stuff that I think I didn't realize before I could build it because I didn't have the skills, as you said. And so it didn't come to mind at some point that I could do something about it. And now that you have the possibility to do it, and it's doable, it's attainable, it's something you can touch. And so it's a bit like entrepreneurship. Once you become an entrepreneur, every time you have a discussion, I'm going to the restaurant and I don't know, I'm seeing something a bit different, just the QR code on the table to pay. I'm like, okay, this is a business. How do they price it? And so all your mind is set up to understand how things work and how people sell stuff. How is the business working? What are the personas? Your mind is, set for this. And so I think it's a bit the same thing when you're a developer. When you're a developer, you're an engineer, you're trying to understand how things are built. And because you can build the things, I think you're more keen to just, build things on your own. And now, because of vibe coding, pretty much everyone can have this mindset. And so I'm amazed by things I can build because I think I can make my life easier. But it's still the very early days. I didn't ship a proper product that is usable. But, this is a bit like my mindset about it.
And I 100% agree to that. The bottleneck that I found to date is that you can build a lot of stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can build a business out of it, right?
Yeah.
Enters vibe marketing. I'm a huge believer that the ability to build stuff is going to be second to the ability to distribute it. So to your earlier question of, are you afraid of AI? How do you use AI? I think that at some point we're also going to be transitioning from using AI as a building tool and also as a distribution lever, especially in the world of vibe coding. Because you can ship 1,000 of different apps, 1,000 of different ideas. If you don't have the ability to distribute,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. If you don't have users, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. Okay.
So that's a challenge I'm incredibly passionate about, is how do you go from giving someone the tools to build to giving them the tools to build the business?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a good thing because it's the same thing with, let's say, the role of AI in design, because I think it's just going to raise the bar and the standard in the industry when it comes to building a product, building an MVP, let's say, or building a website, building a design. Creating a design.
Yeah.
Everything is going to have the same level of accessibility. It's going to be accessible to everyone. But then what's going to make the difference? And I think it's probably what you're saying is, let's say, are you able to market it? Are you able to make it a business?
Yeah.
For designs, are you able to make those designs a reality again? Are people going to be using those designs?
Yeah.
Does it make sense? And so on.
100%. And I was asking myself the question of, if had I had vibe coding when I tried to build a business, would have I been successful? And I don't think I would have. I just would have spent maybe a little less time building stuff, but it's not yet tied to this item of testing the market, right? So I still think that we need some great brains like yours to come in and kickstart a movement around the thematics of vibe marketing as a continuation of all of those AI tools. Because the more AI tools, the more, pardon my French, the more shitty apps. The more shitty apps, the more the market becomes saturated with a lot of different solutions. So the best ones are not necessarily going to be the best tools, but the best distributors.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good call. And so can you share some examples maybe of things that you really love building like these days?
Yeah. Again, full disclosure for Notion, I am definitely not commercializing those and I'm using them more for my internal
personal
fun. Exactly. What did I build recently? I built a PMF tool. So what does it do? Whenever you have a business idea, or whenever you see a cool website, you inject either the URL or a blurb about the idea, and it performs a market research, letting you know what's your market like, what's the size, what are the trends, what are the competitors, what are some interesting angles that you could take.
Okay.
Because that was definitely a pain point that I had while developing. So that has been one thing that we did.
Nice.
Yeah, that's
really nice.
This is my hobby with a good friend.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. On my end, I tried building. I saw two things recently. One is, I'm going to talk about it. So in Webflow, you can do a ton of things.
Okay.
But a ton of really important features like collaborating on the website, getting just logs from the activity, what's happening, is you cannot get it. Either you cannot get it like from the basic plans, and you have to go with the enterprise plan, and it's like a ton of money for a lot of customers. And just let's say the activity logs. And so I figured, okay, maybe with vibe coding I can try to build like a Webflow activity tracker.
That's cool.
And because they have like now a marketplace Webflow where you can build apps for Webflow, it makes sense. No, I'm not like building some kind of turnaround just to not pay for enterprise. So I'm just trying to see if I can build like an activity log that connects to website. You add a script, and then you can just generate simple data from that and understand who published the website, who made changes on the homepage. Can I get also some just basic data from the website, like a mini Google Analytics? And so I started to build that, and it's working, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't code anything. I just prompted stuff on Lovable. And it's crazy to see that I could build it like without any technical skills. Yeah. So that's something that is very useful for my customers. So that's why I was like, okay, we have this pain internally. We cannot ask every customer to just go in their enterprise plan at Webflow because it's going to be minimum, $50K, $60K a year. And it's like a very important cost. And so I was like, okay, maybe I can build something. The other thing is a very personal use case. I hate and love at the same time receiving WhatsApp vocal messages.
Hate it. I get it.
I can love doing those because sometimes I feel like it's a good
laziness, thing. 100%.
And I hate receiving those. And I'm like, is there a way to just summarize a vocal message with ChatGPT something? And have a recap, the 3 bullet points of what the person needs from me. And so I started to build like a WhatsApp business app, And so I started to say, okay, I want to connect that to ChatGPT to get the summarize of the vocal. I want to connect that to WhatsApp business and build an app that is directly in WhatsApp so that when you receive a WhatsApp vocal message, you just have to transfer it to the other conversation that is WhatsApp summariser. I don't know how to call that. And then you receive a recap.
I love it. Yeah, I'd actually find it. I'd actually use that. I wanted to ask you a question, which deviates completely the conversation, and I apologize. How do you find and prioritize business ideas?
Like if I had to launch something tomorrow?
Yeah, because like your ideas are really cool. Like how did you came up with those, and like how do you know which ones are worth it?
So that's a good question. I mean, the first thing is, do I want to really make it a business or not? I mean, sometimes it's just an idea, and I like to play that with that, and I'd like to make it a use case that is potentially can be a good and important. I mean, something I could really use in my daily job. I think the first thing is definitely it's really a pain. That's the first part. It's really a pain, and if I identify a pain, I try to find a bunch of solutions.
Yeah.
I cannot find like a proper solution. And then I'm like, okay, what can I do to resolve that pain? And so if the pain is strong enough and I see that the pain is really shared by a lot of people around me, it starts ticking and I'm like, okay, maybe there is something to do about it. And for the case of the Webflow activity tracker, I mean, we are building hundreds of websites. And I'm seeing that pain every single time. So it makes sense from a market perspective to develop something.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's the first thing. If the pain is real and you see that it applies on at a level that is important, not just one person, you try to understand that, okay, maybe there's something to do about it. So that I would say that's my way of prioritizing. And then it's just about also what's the amount of energy I'm going to put into this project. And before that vibe coding part, I couldn't just do it because I had to find a CTO and I couldn't ask for any idea I had in mind. Just, hey, can you build a MVP, please? Because I want to try it with my, list of potential users. And now I can do it. And so it's kind of crazy how it opens my mind every single time. And now every time I face a use case, definitely I have to prioritize it because I cannot do everything. But sometimes I take an hour just to try and go as far as I can and see if it could work potentially.
Interesting.
And then the next phase for those products that I was mentioning is, thankfully now I have a team, almost 10 people at KLIMB.
That's crazy.
So we have 2 developers. And so now I'm pushing those projects to those guys.
Do they use AI a lot to develop your developers?
Yeah, they use a lot.
Like Cursor, Windsurf?
Cursor, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we do for websites, we do either Webflow framer sites.
Yeah.
So no code pretty much most of the time. Yeah. Just some scripts here and there, but it's really no code, the approach. And then we do headless CMSs. Okay. So like Storyblock, as we talked about. And so in this case, definitely like Cursor is the good go-to for developing with AI.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, in general, how we applied AI, and it's part of, let's say, now the culture that every person at KLIMB needs to use AI just to increase his productivity, increases the way he approaches his processes, his workflow, because it's part of our daily jobs and we cannot just, avoid it. And it's a big thing in design in general because you have so many now tools for design. Just the fact that you can generate images in second for a lot of different use cases. You can generate super clean photography. And before, I had to do the photos.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And a lot of different use cases. You can generate illustrations, and it's a bit difficult for me because at the same time we were working with a bunch of illustrators before.
I wanted to ask you, yeah.
And now I'm like, okay, from a cost-efficient perspective.
So do you find that AI illustrations are able and it's a tricky question for you, I know, because you work with those people. Are AI illustrations the future of illustration, or will we still need to have human illustrators?
I think so the level of quality is increasing day after day. And so...
You see the day coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
We are already prompting illustrations.
Yeah.
And the output is good enough to use it in production. So the illustrator in that part, didn't exist. In some use cases, and this is where I think as a designer, as an artist in general, as an illustrator, as a photographer, as an art role, I don't know, whatever you're doing, I think you just have to, it's like any shift in the revolution we faced in the world. Before there was like a radio, then the TV came, and radio stations were like, okay, now everyone's going to watch TV, nobody's going to listen to the radio. But no, just radio evolved in a different way. We still have radio today. Why, And the same thing with the internet. After the internet, there were like web TVs, and some people were like, okay, TV is dead. No, TV is still existing. And the same thing with, Web3. You were like, okay, it's another revolution. I think it's the same thing with AI. It's like another revolution. You just have to, you don't have to be afraid of it. You just have to embrace it. And I think it can give you superpower. And then if you're an artist and you're an illustrator, you still have a lot of value, because you're still going to be the one at some point designing the first things, but maybe to put it in production, put it at scale.
Yeah, you're going to be able to scale yourself.
You're going to be able to scale your skill much more faster, and you're going to be still the senior person that understands the context, that understands why it makes sense to design stuff in such a way for such industry, for such persona, and you're going to be the one coming with that expertise in consulting that the AI still doesn't do today.
Interesting, yeah.
And so I think this is how we approach it. Definitely for some projects now, just to ideate on stuff, I can do it on my own with my computer and generate a prompt and have something that I have in mind and put it out there. But for other customers, we still are working with illustrators, because we still need to have, let's say, if it's a 3D mascot, we need the mascot properly designed. Yeah. And it's not going to be done by AI yet. So, this is how we approach it.
Interesting. Okay. Definitely, branding is definitely going to take AI as the bicycle of their own mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's a good way to put it. So to finish, because we only have a few minutes left in this nice podcast setup, I do have a question, and I stole this question from another episode I saw. I think the founder of Stripe asked this question to the founder of NVIDIA, and that's why I want to ask it.
Yeah.
He said, "How is your work-life balance?" to the founder of NVIDIA, and he replied something, and I want to have your take on this question.
Mine is willingly not very good, but that's what I want. I feel like there is different levels of burnouts, but the one that I'm most affected with and that I am most concerned with is called bore out.
Okay.
Which is essentially meaning that you're getting a little bit bored at work, you're not working on exciting things, and as a result, you lose engagement and you ultimately drop off. Bear in mind that, and I know it's not the nicest thing to say, but I love working. Like, I enjoy working. So I don't seek to have a perfect balance of work-life balance, because working more allows me to prevent bore out, and as a result allows me to have a better share of the quality of life for the remainder of the part.
Okay.
But it's a very personal thing. Some people will need to have a perfect split. Some people will need to have a bit more elements of life rather than work, and that's completely cool. Everybody is different, and everybody reacts in different ways to what they need in life. Me personally, I have an imbalanced work-life balance. I work more than I enjoy life. I love working on Sundays. I love working on Saturdays. And I am more pumped by a Monday morning than I am by a Friday evening.
Okay.
And I know it sounds weird, but it's what allows me to remain sane and challenged.
Okay.
Because if that wouldn't be the case, I would feel bored. And ultimately, even though I would have a bigger share of the life available, I would not make the most out of it.
Okay. I get it. I mean,
what about you?
I think you're asking the question to every entrepreneur. I mean, work-life balance is super hard in general. I tend to. It's important because I do have a wife. I do have plans for a.
Congratulations! I didn't know you were married.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one important part. And so I think it's healthy for me in my scenario to make sure that I separate as much as I can work and life. Mm-hmm. And so the first step for us, for instance, I know that today we're big into remote for a lot of teams, but for KLIMB, I love the office.
Okay, I wanted your opinion about remote. Yeah,
I love the office. I love going there. Yeah. It helps separate my life and my office. I mean, of course, I'm flexible. Employees can work remotely and so on. It's just that it creates, at least for us, a separation. It creates a frame where we can dedicate and be passionate about our work life in this space. And then if I close the laptop at 7, at 8, at 9, I don't care. When I go back to my house, I'm not working.
Okay, and you're able to make the cut.
Yeah, I'm making the cut, and that's super important. But sometimes I'm saying it to my wife. Let's say last Saturday, we are in the big deep water now with a customer, and I need to work this Saturday. But I went to the office. Okay, so I went to the office full Saturday. Okay, 9 to 5.
You have a division home and work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I try to do it. It's important.
Okay. That's healthy. I should try that.
Do you go to the office? How is remote at Notion?
So Notion is an in-office company that offers a certain amount of flexibility.
Okay.
What does that actually mean? It means that we go to the office 2 to 3 times a week. Okay. And then the rest we can work remotely.
Okay.
A few years ago, I was, like many others, I think, a strong remote warrior.
Yeah, me
I was
too.
Like, if a company doesn't
offer... How come we don't have remote?
Exactly. I was going crazy around it. And now I'm like, for me personally, I think I need an office. It gives you a structure. It gives you easier access to your colleagues. It develops camaraderie. Camaraderie, I don't know how you say that in English.
I think it's a good way.
Friendship. So now I'm a big believer in working from the office, but with a certain level of flexibility. I love having my 1 or 2 days a week working remotely from either home or, I don't know, co-working space, wherever else.
Okay.
But especially because rent is so expensive in Dublin, you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah?
Oh, you wouldn't believe it. Like, it's Paris times 2.
Guess. What?
Yeah, mad.
Okay.
Like crazy. So apartments are small.
And you have rain all day long.
You have rain all day long. No. Yeah, kind of. And my girlfriend, she's a salesperson at Datadog.
Okay.
So she calls a lot. And imagine my job is a lot of meetings and also has a strong elements of partnerships as business development. And her job is literally to cold call people.
Oh, yeah.
Do that in a small apartment.
Yeah, it's impossible.
You got to go to the office.
Yeah, I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing before we close things is we talked a lot about work, still talking about work-life balance. What's the one thing you love to do outside of work?
What is the one thing that I love to do outside of work? A few different things. What is the one fun thing that I started doing recently? I started dog sitting.
Oh,
that's weird. I know.
Okay.
But my girlfriend and I, we love dogs.
Okay.
We're really into dogs. But due to our life, which is an expat life, so we travel a bunch. Plus, we have a small apartment. Plus, we have a lot of imbalanced work-life balance. We can't get a dog yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So we subscribed to a dog sitting app called GoodDog that just got acquired by a bigger American company called Rover. For anybody who's interested. And we offer dog sitting services, which allows us to spend most of our free time with dogs. I
love that. Okay.
either going, depending on what breed it is, but we could spend hours and hours in parks and long walks, or just, just chilling and getting educated about dogs and stuff like that. If money wasn't the problem, I would probably open a dog-related service at some point.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
That was one of my last questions, actually, was like, if you were not working at Notion, what would you do?
If I wasn't working at Notion, what would I do? I'd love to open a service for dog sitting at some point.
Okay.
That's random.
Super nice.
I know. But yeah.
Okay. Super nice. Well, thanks a lot, Yann, for sharing a ton of different things. We talked about, this is the outro directly. So we talked about a lot of different things. Of course, your early days, how did you find your way in Notion? We talked about, of course, what you're doing at Notion, different programs, what it's like working at Notion. And then we moved into the sort of vibe coding stuff. Yeah, we did. And I love that. So, and thanks for sharing all of those insights. It was super interesting.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Love the space, love the setup. You'll have a successful pod.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the episode. I hope you liked it. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you want. If you don't want, I don't really care. And then, of course, if you want to watch other episodes, please have a look. The other ones, I'm pretty sure you get some pretty good insights from different folks in the industry when it comes to marketing, branding, design, different stuff. So I hope you enjoyed. Bye.